Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. At the beginning of my presentation, let me express my sincere gratitude and deepest homage to our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the four great leaders, and all the martyrs who sacrificed their lives during our liberation struggle of 1971. I'd also like to acknowledge the sacrifices of the women, children, and the innocents, many of whom carry the wounds of sufferings until today. I especially pay my tributes to the martyred intellectuals of 1971, whose immeasurable and irreparable losses are still felt by the nation. Today I'm standing at a place from where the 1971 genocide of Bangladesh started and eventually spread across the country. In that sense, Dhaka University is considered as the epicenter of the 1971 genocide. This is one of the very reasons why the genocide issue particularly attracts me. Moreover, as a student of international relations, I find the issue of genocide very important, given the emergence of new global actors, revolution in the fields of technology, transformations in the conflict nature and balance, and renewed trends in development and governance. In my presentation, I aim to represent the contemporary debates around the concept of genocide and shed light on the changing nature of genocide, both from academic practices and real-time experiences. I've organized my presentation broadly in 4 sections. The first section provides an overview of genocide and mass violence around the world. The second section represents the definition of genocide and demonstrates the associated ambiguity of the concept. The third section proceeds to identify the changing pattern of genocides and their responses across countries by highlighting some significant shifts in genocide studies since the mid-20th century up until now. In the concluding section, future directions of genocide and mass violence are attributed. So what does genocide mean? Before that, I'll bring some contemporary aspects of genocide, the genocide and mass violence's overview. After the Second World War, there was a hope that the horrors of Holocaust would bring such violence to an end forever. Instead, genocide and mass violence have become commonplace in the second half of the 20th century and onwards. Bangladesh, Cambodia, China, Indonesia, Tibet, East Timor, Argentina, El Salvador, Chile, Guatemala, Colombia, Bosnia, and Rwanda are only some of the better-known places where such violence has been perpetrated. In fact, in the last century, government genocidal policies alone have resulted in over 210 million deaths, and 80% of these are civilian deaths, which accounts for nearly 4 times the number of the individuals killed in combats during international or domestic wars during the same period. These statistics do not include human rights violations and severely underestimate the additional toll on human life from physical and psychological scarring. In the 21st century, genocidal activities and mass violence have been going on in different parts of the world. However, they are very often acknowledged or properly understood due to complicated international political agenda, complex use of violence by numerous and sometimes unidentified actors, and poor media attractions. For instance, in Syria, thousands of civilian populations are being killed by numerous perpetrators having different objectives. All these may not fall under the traditional definition of genocide. However, if considered under the changed atmosphere of the 21st century, the activities by essence may appear genocidal. From this very point of view, to understand genocide and mass violence of the contemporary world, an interdisciplinary perspective is required. Individual psychology, group psychology, culture, social institutions, the social conditions within a country, the political system, and the system of international relations all have roles in both causation and prevention of genocide and mass violence. Now let's go to the definition of genocide. Let's see genocide a bit critically. In popular discourse, from media debates to everyday discussions, a number of terms relating to mass violence, crimes against humanity, war crimes, Holocaust, ethnic cleansing, and genocide are frequently used interchangeably, and sometimes giving the impression that they have the same meaning. Although these terms are often mentioned in the same context and indeed can be related, they each have very distinct and specific meanings. Three of these terms, crimes against humanity, genocide, and war crimes, have legal codifications, while ethnic cleansing does not have. Among the mentioned concepts, genocide remains as the most common form of mass violence recognized by most ordinary citizens, civil society actors, and policymakers. The term has generally been traced back to Lemkin, who in the 1940s defined genocide as a coordinated plan of different actions aiming at the destruction of essential foundations of the life of national groups with the aim of annihilating the groups themselves. In short, by genocide, Lemkin meant the deliberate destruction of groups of people. The 1948 United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide, which is also known as Genocide Convention, provided the key legal definition of genocide. However, the convention is limited to 4 specific types of groups. In particular, it defines genocide as the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, such which can manifest through a number of acts, including killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. In a more recent work, Porter broadened the types of groups to define genocide as the deliberate destruction in whole or in part by a government or its agents of a racial, sexual, religious, tribal, ethnic, or political minority. However, to provide a comprehensive expression of the concept of genocide, Scott Strauss put forth 3 sets of properties based on contemporary experiences. First, genocide as a coordinated effort to destroy groups often is extensive or large-scale violence that usually is widespread and sustained across space and time. Genocide also is deliberate violence. It is an organized, usually systematic effort to destroy groups. The first set of watchwords for genocide is thus extensive, large-scale, organized, systematic, sustained, and deliberate violence. Second, genocide is groups and selective violence. Genocide is fundamentally about violence in which victims are identified and selected on the basis of their ostensible group membership. In genocide, individuals are attacked, harmed, and killed because of their identity, not because of actions that they take. The focus on attacks against groups and civilians associated with groups is thus the second set of watchwords. Finally, genocide is group destructive violence. The hallmark of genocide is a concerted effort to take actions to prevent a group from surviving and reproducing in a particular territory under a perpetrator's control. The third set of watchwords is thus destruction, elimination, and extermination. The Holocaust was a classic example of genocide, as the Nazi regime conducted deliberate, sustained, extensive, and systematic violence against millions of civilians for more than 3 years. The violence was mainly aimed to destroy the Jewish population. Compared to genocide, the concept of crimes against humanity is somewhat broader concept as it considers acts committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population. However, when it comes to the question of intention, to completely or partly destroy a certain group of people, crimes against humanity differs from genocide. Crimes against humanity do not require any specific intent to destroy a group. Moreover, some crimes against humanity, such as the use of forced labor, the confiscation of property, and deportation, may be a prelude to genocide or part of its execution. However, these crimes against humanity do not always lead to genocide, nor are they always a part of genocide. On the contrary, the concept of war crimes stands somewhat apart in terms of scale and character from the concept of genocide. War crimes are limited in the sense as they're specifically committed during war times. Even if not listed as an international crime, ethnic cleansing overlaps conceptually and materially with genocide and crimes against humanity. The central difference between genocide and ethnic cleansing concerns the purpose of violence. In genocide, the purpose is group destruction, while in ethnic cleansing, the purpose is group removal. Now let's go to the changing pattern of genocides and their responses. In a more globalized world of the 21st century, genocide manifests a number of changing patterns, mainly in terms of actors involved in perpetration, groups targeted, mediating institutions, nature of conflict and means of violence used, objectives of extermination, and their consequences. Although genocide is traditionally a state-organized activity involving the dominant group of the society that commands the monopoly of violence, often a group larger in terms of the number of its members may be victimized. Again, genocide doesn't involve only the legitimate armed groups of the state. It may involve even mercenaries and in some cases individuals having the same identity of the targeted group. There may also be many indirect actors behind genocide, ranging from the foreign states to international arms traders or corporate ventures. Genocide may involve terrorist groups or unnamed groups as well, which do not possess any explicit identity based on race, culture, ethnicity, or nationalism. Contemporary studies commonly identify a number of reasons leading to genocide that include large-scale instability, armed conflict, transformative or exclusionary ideology, and prior discrimination or violence against a particular group. In some studies, deep-seated hatred, government capacity, authoritarianism, and economic causes have also been recognized. This clearly justifies that the groups targeted during genocide are not only based on their narrower identity of nationalism, ethnicity, religion, or race. The end of the Cold War and the withdrawal of the superpowers from extensive military engagements across the world, emergence of varied non-traditional security threat perceptions, and revolutions in weaponry technologies all contributed to change the nature of contemporary conflicts and means of violence used. As a result, mass violence and genocide increased in some parts of the world in the post-Cold War era. Weaponry technology also changed the rule of the game, since even an individual can now incur massive destruction to a large segment of population. Moreover, attacks from distance have increased the cruelty and deadliness of war. After the 9/11 attack in the USA, sudden violent attacks are no more uncommon to global communities that led to reactionary genocidal activities by USA and some of its allies, particularly Afghanistan and Iraq. The rise of many mediating institutions since Second World War, such as ad hoc tribunals of International Court of Justice, International Criminal Court, national courts of the countries, right-based organizations, civil society groups, research organizations, media, etc., is a significant aspect of the prevention of genocide. Although the international community has developed a mechanism for prosecuting the perpetrators of genocide, but has not developed the will or the mechanism for intervening in a genocide as it happens. And this remains as one of the major lacking in the prevention of genocide. In my concluding remark, I'd like to say that the major reason why no single generally accepted definition of genocide has emerged is because academics have adjusted their focus to emphasize different times and spaces and have found it convenient to use slightly different definitions to efficiently interpret context-specific events. It is understandable that based on the renewed environment and nature of the agents, the concept of genocide will continue to transform in the coming days. The future